What OJ, purple stuff, Sunny Delight.
What's in this? Tastes like orange and tangerine. Yeah, and lime. Some healthy junk too.
Whoa, what are you doing? Thirsty. What?
Problem, guys?
No. Way to be Mr. Jackson. Come on. Yeah,
Fucking casuals. Fire.
In the Age of Ancients.
That was weird. In the Age of Ancient, there was a legendary mercenary. Brian Reynolds is what they used to call him. He was capable of unspeakable deeds. A cruel, twisted mind is what resided inside his skull, and to wash away all the guilt he felt because of his actions, he drank and drank until all of his victims' voices tormenting him in his mind were silenced. One day, at the pub, he had way too much to drink, and got caught in an argument with his best friend. The two usually solved the discrepancies with fists and booze, but everything changed when his brother-in-arms drew out his sword and tried to kill Brian. Brian defended himself and ended up murdering his best friend. And for this reason he was brought into prison, where he was sentenced to spend the rest of his life. At night, while sleeping in his cell, Brian had many dreams. The same voice of the same woman telling him to find adventure through the catacombs in Lordran and find the grave of the Lord of Death himself, Nito. Lordran, I can't even get out of my cell, Brian said to the voice, and the voice always responded,
"With faith, anything is possible."
Brian suddenly woke up from his dream, and to his surprise, a knight he has never seen before dropped a key in his cell. Was this the faith the voice was telling him about? From that moment, Brian decided to become a cleric and to find the grave of the Lord of Death. After using the key to open his cell, Brian started looking for a weapon he could use to escape the prison. He first found a shield and then a mace. This will do, he thought to himself. Years have passed since the last time he had held a weapon, but even though his strength was taken away from him, he still knew how to use them. He found a mysterious knight on his last breath. The knight offered him a drink and a key.
Here, take this.
But Brian swore the day his best friend died that he would never, ever touch a drop of alcohol for the rest of his life. So after putting an end to the misery of the mysterious night, he was ready to break free and go on his mission. He found a talisman on the way, probably owned by a cleric visiting the imprisoned to give them their last chance of redemption. Then Brian dropped on the head of the chief guard and used his mace to end the creature's life and get the key that would grant him the freedom he so desperately needed. Brian wondered how he was going to reach Lordran at this point. It's so far, he thought to himself. A giant bird called Convenience all of a sudden came to pick him up and brought him back to his homeland. He was dropped right at the pub where everything went wrong. But Brian had no time for mourning on the past. He immediately traveled to the catacombs where he took a leap of faith. And this drop could have killed the faithless man, but not Brian. He knew he had the protection of his newfound lord Nito. After barely getting away from an evil demon, he found the eyes. With these, you will see the truth, he recalled one of the voices telling him in one of his dreams. He rested in an open casket to hide from the demon when, all of a sudden, he was teleported exactly where he was supposed to go. This must be faith, he said to himself. Nito was resting in his coffin. Brian, on his knees, pledged his allegiance to him and swore his loyalty, and was rewarded with the Grave Lord's sword. And Nito spoke to him, ordering him to free the world from the heretics who didn't believe in death. At this point, Brian realized he lacked the strength and the dexterity to wield such a powerful weapon. So by using the power of a homeward bone, Brian made his return to the Firelink Shrine. Here, he picked up the souls of his victims in order to regain the power he once had. But it wasn't enough, so Brian traveled all the way to Blighttown, where he had defeated many strong foes and picked up the souls they had left behind. And once he returned to the notorious pub, he gained enough strength and dexterity to be able to two-hand the sword of his lord. After venturing through the Valley of the Drakes, onto the Darkroot Garden, he arrived at the Undead Parish, and he then brought his new sword to the blacksmith, that told him that in order to refine the blade of his weapon, he must have to kill the Titanite demon in the room right next to them and take the Titanite from it. So Brian slashed through the demon's stone-hard body and took the precious item and upgraded his weapon for the first time. And it was now time for Brian to take his strength and put it to use against his first heretic, the Gargoyle. With his formidable weapon, he defeated the Gargoyle with ease, when all of a sudden, a second one appeared. The second gargoyle didn't stand a chance, as it only took 2 hits from Brian's deadly sword to perish. After defeating his foes, Brian rang the first spell of awakening in the name of his lord. And so, the journey to defeat the second heretic began, taking our hero to the infamous Blighttown. This place is filled with poison and wonders, and it was here that Brian realized he could use his faith to cure his wounds. Chaos Witch Quelaag was refusing to let death take her, so Brian naturally had to bring death to her. By dodging the spider's lava attack and avoiding her explosions, he slashed through her flesh like it was butter, eventually downing the Great Witch and claiming his first great soul. And so now the path to Anor Londo was opened up. Our hero would only have to get through the traps, boulders and deadly enemies found in Sen's fortress, eventually reaching the top of the structure where he would have to face the protector of the great city of the gods, the Iron Golem. Brian knew that because of the creature's massive size, its weakness probably relied in its legs, so he attacked his foe's limbs with persistency and eventually got his enemies to fall on his knees and thus defeating it without too many problems. The path to Anor Londo was now officially opened, and Brian knew in his heart that what he was doing was the right thing, and it was all in the name of Nito. Upon arriving in the Golden City, Brian ventured through dangerous paths, killing any enemy that would dare question the faith in death in his lord. He got through the infamous archer duo, famous in all of Lordran as some of the most deadliest warriors in the land, and finally a bonfire where Brian could finally rest. Lying ahead of him were the 2 most powerful simps in Lord of Lordran, Ornstein and Smaug. But Brian knew he wasn't strong enough to defeat them. So, in order to upgrade his weapon, he found some demon titanites in a chest, and so Brian brought his weapon to the giant blacksmith, famous in all of Lordran for his kind-hearted spirit, and the blacksmith accepted to upgrade Brian's weapon to +2. Our hero was now confident he could defeat the simp duo. But Ornstein was way faster and Smaug much stronger than what our hero initially expected, and Brian's prayers to heal himself were way too slow, and so our hero was defeated.
I'm sorry, my lord,
were the last words he muttered before entering the darkness.
But then light, and a familiar voice started speaking.
From fire you will return, and as my loyal servant you will never know true death until you become Lord of Dark.
And so Brian rose back from the ashes and started to do anything in his power to never disappoint his master ever again. So he hunted the Titanite demon to improve his blade, found the best armor he could, found even more upgrade materials for his weapon, got the giant blacksmith to improve his sword. With this new level of confidence, Brian was now ready more than ever to take on the 2 simps. And with the two legendary warriors defeated, Brian entered the room over the arena where the epic battle took place to find the Lord Vessel and fulfill his Lord wish. Brian was dumbstruck. He had never seen anything more beautiful, and so, just like Ornstein and Smaug, he was hypnotized by Guinevere the Twitch streamer's bosom and became a simp.
Chosen undead, I am Guinevere.
Our hero was ordered by his lady to use the Lord Vessel to donate the Lord's souls to her for a free sub to her OnlyFans and the chance to succeed her decrepit father into ruling the next age of fire. I'm sorry, Lord Nito, but I will do anything I can to make her happy, even if it means betraying you. Needless to say, Nito was furious.
You will never be together.
Well, he was more scared than angry, because he had created an immortal being, and he knew Brian was coming to get him. Brian saw his lord's reaction as a threat to his possible relationship with Guinevere, and so he prepared to battle his old master. He encountered an old friend that provided him with more healing prayers, traveled to the lowest points of Sense Fortress to kill the last remaining Titanite demons, upgraded his sword to +5, destroyed formidable beings for souls, bought the crest of Artorias from the blacksmith, and defeated the king of the fairies, Sif, that dropped his ring that makes traversing the abyss possible. Traveled back to the catacombs with his +5 weapon, fought Pinwheel the Weeb, traveled through the Tomb of the Giants and reached Nito, his old master. But Brian was overwhelmed by Nito's skeleton army, as they would keep coming back from the dead. So after ascending an occult club he had found prior in Anor Londo, Brian killed the skeletons for good, which meant he was now face to face with his old master. Brian was surprised of how weak Nito actually was without his skeleton army by his side. And when the soul of the Lord of Death finally in his hand, 3 remained. And in order to get 2 of those 3 souls, Brian would have to face 2 of Guinevere's exes. So to prepare for the upcoming battle, Brian hunted down more formidable foes to pillage their souls and use them to get stronger. And after fighting giant centipede demons and venturing through fire and melted stone, Brian confronted the second soul bearer, the Bed of Chaos, stomping the bug in the name of his lady, as she hated bugs. I'm one more soul closer to making her mine, Brian thought to himself, and without wasting any time, he teleported to the Duke's archives where he met one of Guinevere's exes, Seath the Crystal Meth Dragon, which killed Brian and threw him in a cell, but Brian was done with prison for the rest of his life, so he escaped and reached the meth cave.
You will never win Guinevere's heart, she belongs to me.
The dragon then cursed our hero, but Brian ignored the curse and came back to Seath's total surprise. The warriors were neck and neck, but at last, Brian was able to assert his victory on the helpless dragon. And so now, only the 4 kings remained. It is said that the 4 kings lost their minds when Guinevere broke up their relationship, and that they've been hiding in the abyss ever since. Brian slashed through all 4 of them and retrieved the last soul.
And so Brian donated the 4 souls and everything he had to Guinevere and was now ready to confront her father and become the Lord of Dark.
Brian returned to Firelink the very next day, where he was supposed to meet up with Guinevere and take her hand, but he received a visit by 2 guys that showed him a video proving that Guinevere was just an illusion created by her brother to profit over weak-minded individuals.
Thou that tarnisheth the Godmother's image, I am Gwyndolin, and thy transgression shall not go unpunished.
Brian's heart shattered. He had betrayed his master and got catfished. He returned to the pub and started drinking again, and in a moment of pure insanity he started swinging his sword too close to the edge and fell to his death.